Guys, welcome into the Fireside Bears YouTube channel. Max Smith and Usayd Koshal here. You can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. Be sure to follow myself and Max on Twitter at Max Smith ESM and at Usayd Koshal. Max, what's going on, man?
Not much, Unfortunately, I am enjoying the nice Florida weather, where the lowest it gets is about 48 at night if it decides to do that. So wearing a sweater today because I have lost all sense of what cold means. Unfortunately, my blood has accumulated to the, acclimated, there we go, to the weather down here. So I feel a little ashamed. If I ever go back up north, I will probably be freezing. But fortunately, it requires me to go up there as compared to the weather coming to you. So yeah, I'm excited, looking forward to this game. There's a lot to break down.
Yeah, there certainly is. And, I look at this Ravens team. I mean, there's been a couple. Let's just get the injury reports out of the way. So, Lamar Jackson listed with an illness. It's not COVID-19, so he's not feeling well now. Again, we're still a couple days away. Knowing Lamar Jackson, he's probably not even going to practice this week and still play on Sunday. But then on the other hand, for the Bears, I mean, you have no Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson, Akeem Hicks, or Allen Robinson. And yeah, that's significant right there because this is a Bears team that can't really afford to make mistakes. And you certainly can't go into a game out of the bye week where you're down 4 your starters.
Yeah, that is fortunately we did have a bye week to kind of let some of these big guys rest. Bears are cautiously optimistic that Eddie Jackson and Khalil Mack will be able to go against the Ravens. A little interesting on Allen Robinson after he went down after the end of that Steelers game. Really no word on whether or not we're looking at him being available for the Ravens at the moment. That would be a definite blow to this offense as the Bears finally found a way to get Allen Robinson involved into this offense against the Steelers. But it might be a big opportunity for Darnell Mooney to step up. We might see Damiere Byrd actually get a couple grabs. So, fortunately, there is some depth in this wide receiver room, but we would definitely be lacking our big number one there. Eddie Jackson out would be absolutely detrimental to the team. Deion Bush is back practicing, and he'll probably see some reps this Sunday, regardless if Eddie Jackson is back or not. But that's definitely a name that we'd like to see back on Sunday, especially when we're considering his ability to stop the run and how elusive Lamar Jackson is if he does indeed play.
Yeah, so I want to get into kind of talking about how to go ahead and stop Lamar Jackson because I think that that's going to be one of the keys of this game, right? In terms of you look at the Ravens, I mean, so much of what they do is predicated basically on one guy, and that's Lamar Jackson. The entire scheme that they're running is built to go ahead and to cover up whatever deficiencies Lamar Jackson has because no quarterback's the perfect quarterback unless you're a Packers fan and you think that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest person on the planet and that he can absolutely do no wrong. But yeah, anyways, until he backstabs your team in the back and leaves for the Broncos next offseason and then they win the Super Bowl. That would be like poetry right there to my ears. But anyway, getting back on track here, what happens is it's the Bears and Jalen Johnson kind of acknowledge this. They need to go back and they need to look at that Miami Dolphins game plan. They have to realize and understand that, okay, what did the Dolphins do? Well, they were content with rushing 6 or 7, but Miami did that primarily because at the end of the day, when you look at it, they have a pretty good secondary and they have a good enough defense to be able to rush 6 or 7 or even 8 at any given moment. And then have 3 guys back there in coverage, 3 or 4 guys back there in coverage, just roaming the middle of the field and roaming all over the back end of the defense. All right. And shutting down guys like Marquise Brown. Bears fans have to understand something. That's a good game plan to follow in terms of getting after Lamar Jackson. But unfortunately, the Bears don't have the luxury of being able to rush 6, 7, or 8 and then dropping 3 back in coverage because it is a significantly weaker secondary.
Right. And the Miami Dolphins is in a defense that's full of game changers and game stoppers at all across positions of the field. The Bears aren't either. But what's really interesting at how Miami was able to scheme Lamar Jackson out of the game, which is ultimately how you beat the Ravens, is you scheme Lamar out, right? You look at the best player on the field. You say, how do we take him out of the game? Fortunately for football, it's not like basketball where one player can really determine whether or not a team wins. If you're able to take a quarterback out of the game, pretty hard to win that game. You could take Michael Jordan out of the game, and there still might be players that are able to step up and win the game. So what the Dolphins did that's so incredibly interesting is they blitzed their backs more than by backs, I mean defensive backs, more than any other team in the next gen stats recorded era in a single game. 21 blitzes and 17 blitzes from Jevon Holland and Brandon Jones, some of their two defensive backs. That's more than, like I just said, any team ever in the next gen recorded stats era, which is, you know, a couple of years or so. But that's a lot. That's a lot of times. What that does is that applies pressure on the outside of the ball, outside of the line of scrimmage. So essentially the concept is Lamar Jackson's going to move outside of the box regardless of the play. Even if he doesn't have pressure or not, he likes to move. He likes to run around. He gets to feel the pocket. He likes to let his receivers get open, or Lamar likes to run, right? So when you pinch and pincer on the outside, that forces him to either make the guy miss and make a move and then go outside where you might have a linebacker out there in the buzz in the flat, or you go up and then you rely on your interior linemen to stop some of the interior defensive linemen from collapsing that pocket. So really what it does is it makes Lamar Jackson make a split-second decision of, am I going to take off? If I take off, I have to make a man miss, right? Or I go up and then I try not to take a sack. So that's really smart because we haven't really seen too many teams do that. And the amount of blitzes, you're completely right. Ridiculous amount of blitzing, not even only from the defensive back, but from all across the board. And what the Dolphins did to really make Lamar Jackson also second guess, because here's the thing. Blitzes like that won't work if he has a second to get the ball off. Well, they disguised 44% of their coverage in Lamar Jackson's dropbacks. 44% of the time, the Dolphins lined up with a completely different look than what the play actually developed into. So that not is what does that do altogether? Let's summarize this as quickly and as nicely as we can. It takes time away from Lamar Jackson to make a decision and make a move. That was the Dolphins' game plan. Let's take time away from Lamar. If he has to stand there for an extra beat to try to read this defense, guess what? That defensive back is in your face. It's exactly what the Dolphins did, and it worked. And I think the Bears have the talent necessary to replicate this model, but the question is, will the Ravens let it happen again?
Yeah, and so you're right, because in a way, it's more so on the Ravens to figure out what happened and adjust, rather than the Bears to kind of just go out there and throw out a carbon copy game plan. Because again, Baltimore is one of the better run organizations in the league. And you know Harbaugh's going to be making those halftime adjustments as needed in order to have a chance to go ahead and be in this game in the second half. But I also think that irrespective of Lamar Jackson, and I want to note something here, the handful of times that I get to watch the Ravens every single year, let me say this for the record, okay? There's always that one game where Lamar Jackson's off and he seemingly struggles. And usually it's always because the team is sending 6 or 7 pass rushers at him to really slow him down and fluster him. Now, irrespective of Lamar, you have to look at the wide receiver core too. Okay, Sammy Watkins is basically a rotational guy at this point. All right, I think people forget he was a first round pick, but he hasn't lived up to that never really lived up to the first round hype outside of one season. And then there's another guy, Marquise Brown, who is the best wide receiver right now on the Baltimore Ravens. He's so slippery, so slick. The Ravens like to move him inside. They like to move him outside. He's pretty much all over the field. He's both lined up on and off the line of scrimmage. And so Marquise Brown is really that big security blanket for Lamar Jackson. And so the Bears are going to need to figure out a way to take him out of the game too.
Yeah, that's huge there. What the Ravens have is a abundance of talent at every position except for the running back. And what we noticed is a trend with the Ravens for the past 2 years is they do incredibly well because they run the ball the most, right? We look at the Ravens and we look at the run schemes, and they're genius. They're brilliant. And that opens up the passing game and play action game for Lamar Jackson. When that game doesn't work, the Ravens have a hard time running their passing game efficiently. And I think it was Devontae Freeman was in there starting against the Dolphins because they had a bunch of injury in the running back room. So that's definitely a question mark for the Ravens heading into this game is how are they going to be able to operate this run game? Because the Bears' run defense has completely fallen apart over the past couple weeks or so, completely fallen apart. But fortunately, it's not looking like that's going to be too big of a problem here with the Ravens. Let's look at some of their stats real quick. Their offensive DVOA this season is 10th best in the league, meaning they have the 10th best offense in the league right now. Their defense is 25th. So their defense is historically bad for this Ravens unit. Something that has been pretty lukewarm, mediocre to good over the past couple of seasons. And they're definitely relying on the strength of their offense to win games at the moment. So this is a really good opportunity for Justin Fields to put up numbers like he did in Pittsburgh. And this is a really good opportunity for the Bears to kind of make a statement win on a team that's has a lot of question marks heading into the most important part of the season. I like the Ravens. I do. I like Lamar Jackson. I like Harbaugh. But I don't think these guys are contenders. I really don't. I don't see them as late playoff berths. I don't see them as really anything more than just kind of benefiting from the talent that they have right now. They show that they can get out schemed and out coached by one of the worst teams in the league. I'm little confident about pretty confident about what the Bears can do this Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another slugfest at Soldier Field, right? In terms of how these games are played and how this game certainly shakes out. But it's also important to go ahead and note when you look at the Ravens kind of season and the 3 losses that they've had. So, I mean, you lose to 6 points by the Raiders in week 1. You lose by like 24 points to the Cincinnati Bengals in week 7. And then you lose by 12 points to the Miami Dolphins. So their margin for losses has kind of been all over the place. But it's also noteworthy because when the Ravens are clicking on all cylinders and they're winning games, I mean, look at who some of their wins have come against. Some of the weaker teams in the league. So you have Detroit, Denver, Indianapolis, the LA Chargers. The Ravens absolutely dismantled them. And even that was a home game. M&T Bank Stadium is a very tough place to play at when the Ravens are home. And so the reason I bring this up is because ultimately it's like you look at it, well, they really haven't beat any super high quality opponents. Okay. You could argue maybe the Chiefs and Chargers, but then also you have to keep something in mind is that the Chiefs are not as good this year as they've considered to have been in years past. And then the Chargers, that was just the one game where the Chargers got punched in the mouth, laid an egg, but they've rebounded real nicely.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we could talk about the Chiefs all day long, them finally kind of coming out of their shell for the first time, and Pat Mahomes finally putting together a good game. Maybe it was a coincidence that his brother wasn't in the news that week either. I don't know. Maybe just a coincidence, just putting that out there. But no, you're completely right. You know, the Bengals pretty handedly beat the Ravens 41-17. That's pretty impressive for a team that the Bears were able to beat. The Vikings barely lost to the Ravens in overtime, right? And then, of course, what happened the next week is the Dolphins kind of embarrassed the Ravens. The Bears have played pretty well at home this year, which is something that I think we have to mention as well. They're 500 at home. I think they only have 1 win and 3 losses on the road. So much better home team this year. And I think this is a really good opportunity for the Bears coming off the bye week. Maybe Matt Nagy finally gets his first post-bye win, which is a lot harder to do in this league for some reason than what you'd think it would. But what if that happens? There's a lot of question marks that'll come up around the Ravens. But I think there's going to be some question marks coming around the Bears is where was this entire season, right? That if they come out and they perform except to the level that they can, if they put up a game similar to what they did in Pittsburgh in the second half of what they did to Pittsburgh, they can beat this Ravens team. I'm with full confidence in saying that because the second half of that Pittsburgh game, the Chicago Bears look better than they have since 2018. Without a doubt in my mind, moving the ball downfield, defense was actually making plays outside of the calls that we won't talk about. But if the Bears put a performance up against the Ravens like that, there's going to be some question marks about are the Bears going to sneak into the playoffs here? People won't think you're so crazy if they're able to take a win against the Ravens. And then guess what? We have another easy win against the Lions on Thanksgiving. Then we're right back in the thick of the playoff hunt. So this is a big game. This is a really big game.
Yeah, and speaking of it being a big game, I'm going to take another angle here. There's a couple ways to view this Bears-Ravens game, right? In the context of a win. it could just be the one surprise win that the Bears manage to squeak out every single year. Also, side note, I firmly believe this, that if the Bears were playing the Bengals sometime right now or over the next couple of weeks, the Bears would probably get punched in the mouth because the Bengals have figured out how to get everything rolling and everything clicking on all cylinders. Now, I will say this much. When you look at the Bears as a team, you have to realize and understand that in this game, the defense is going to do all it needs to not even contain, but just neutralize Lamar Jackson. Okay. What it's going to come down to is, can the Bears offense move the ball consistently enough against the Ravens defense? Okay. The Bears need to know that, and Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, you can wear this Ravens defense down by running the football, but they've also got some monsters up on that defensive line with players like Justin Matabuki and Calais Campbell. The second level is filled with a playmaker and linebacker, Patrick Queen, one of the ascending middle linebackers in the NFL right now, going into his basically second season. And then in the defensive backfield, you have Anthony Everett, you have Marlon Humphrey. You've got players like Geno Stone. So some really solid plays, and they have talent at all three levels. One of the defining keys for me in this game is going to be, can the Bears wide receivers outrun this Ravens secondary? Because Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson are going to need to have the games of their life and just consistently get open. In terms of Justin Fields, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep using your legs to scramble and save us, okay? But then also make sure you're going short to intermediate to deep on your reads. And I would love to see more play action dialed up, because this is the perfect game for you to kind of continue to mess around and experiment with rolling out of the pocket, with getting Justin Fields' mobility more involved, running more play action.
Yeah, this is a good game to also get Cole Kmet involved as well. I think we finally got him started. Again, it's really funny how he really only gets started in the second half of the season, similar to what happened last year. I'm guessing his numbers are going to look similar, where he has basically zero production in the first 8 games, but absolutely goes off in the last 8 games, because for some reason Matt Nagy realizes that he has a good tight end at Cole Kmet that Ryan Pace drafted pretty early. I'm anticipating seeing a lot more of the tight ends in this game, because I think what's going to happen is the Bears staff probably went over the bye, like you said in the last episode. Matt Nagy's in his basement, surrounded by his plays that never worked, and he goes, wait a second, that worked. Whatever we were doing was working against the 10th best defense in the NFL. We need to continue that model of what's working, and let's change it up a little bit. Let's add a little tweak here and there. Let's add the wrench here and there. But whatever worked. There's zero reason to go away from that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with the Bears as we kind of begin to wrap up here, but it seems like if it's working, the Bears are going to move away from it, and Matt Nagy's just going to be like, let me toss it completely out the window. So for me in this game, my score prediction is going to be that the Bears lose in a really close one. They put up a fight, so I'm going to say Ravens 27, Bears 21. I think some of the difference makers that we didn't necessarily discuss, because we don't need to, is that the Ravens are going to be, they're much better coach and they execute much better. Okay. So that lack of good coaching, that lack of consistency, the lack of execution, I think it's going to come back to bite the Bears. And so this losing streak is going to go to 5 games.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to be a little optimistic here just because I need to. I think the Bears are going to roll off whatever happened in Steelers off the bye, feeling pretty good about themselves. And I think the Bears are going to come out swinging. I think they're going to put up a good fight, and I think they're going to walk away winning. And I think the Ravens are, I don't know. I think they're going to have to answer a lot of questions after what happened in Miami. I think they're going to try to put up a good fight, but I don't think it's going to work out too well. I'm thinking at 24-14, Chicago's going to take this on top.
All right, well, that's certainly a more optimistic prediction than I would have expected from you. Also, side note, I know the last time the Ravens were at Soldier Field, the game lasted like 6 hours because of tornadoes and severe thunderstorm in the area, which then at the end of the day just ended up being a complete false alarm. So might as well have never stopped the game and just played through it. That was Mark Trestman's first season. And the Bears were rocking the orange jerseys when the Ravens were fresh off a Super Bowl victory. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it from us. Make sure you're following myself and Max on Twitter at MaxSmithESM and at Usayd Koshal. Follow Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears We'll be back on Monday with a Sunday or Monday, I don't even know, with a recap of Bears Ravens. And then we're going to get into previewing the Lions next week because it'll be Thanksgiving week. But bear down, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Have a great weekend and peace out. We'll see you guys next time.